And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Second and Goal. I'm your host, Alex.
And I'm Gary.
And hopefully everybody is having a great weekend or is about to enjoy another great weekend upcoming. So, if you haven't done so, please go ahead and hit like and hit share and be sure to tell everybody about this show. If you haven't done so, please feel free to go to our Facebook page. Just go to the search engine on Facebook and type in Second and Goal with Alex and Gary. Also, please be sure to show us love on all of our other shows. Every Monday and Wednesday and Tuesday and Thursday, be sure to join Downrange with Sarge every Monday through Wednesday at 7 p.m. Monday and Wednesday, he will be on Spreaker. Tuesday and Thursday, he will be on video. Every Monday and Friday, please be sure to join Gary on his show, No Bones About It. Every Tuesday, feel free to join me as I talk entertainment, or I talk politics and social issues on Depth of Perspective, and every Saturday I talk entertainment. But every Thursday, this is your number one place to come and talk about football. We talk football, regular season, off season, free agencies, all kinds of stuff. This is the place to come and talk about it. So let's go ahead and get this party started. Hey Barbara, how you doing? So
hello.
First things first. We're going to talk about what's going on in the news in regards to football. So, Gary, why don't you go ahead and start us off with what's in the news in football?
Well, the big story in football this week is the Myles Garrett story. For anyone that doesn't know about the Myles Garrett incident, Myles Garrett is the guy that had the little scuffle with the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Mason Rudolph. And swung a helmet, hit Mason Rudolph in the head, and got suspended indefinitely last year.
Yeah.
And then just was, as of yesterday, I believe it was reinstated. And, that's the standing of it right now. He is going to be back playing this year. Mm-hmm. And figured we could chat about that a little bit. So,
absolutely.
I'm going to let you give your opinion on it first, though.
All right. Well, first things first, I want everybody to understand something is that there's a lot that we don't know that happened on that field, right? Now, first things first, we all know that emotions get very hot and heavy on the field. We know that it's a very physical game. Tempers are usually going to fly. It happens every single game where one player might piss off another football player. But the thing is, though, the Browns were, if I'm not mistaken, already losing the game, weren't they?
Oh, this was the game. No. The Cleveland was winning the game.
Oh, they were winning the game.
The game was over, essentially.
Okay, so the game was over. So Cleveland was winning the game, and Mason Rudolph just got sacked again, this time by Myles Garrett. And there's a lot of rumor and speculation going around as to why they started swinging on each other. But according to Myles Garrett, Mason Rudolph dropped an expletive and essentially a derogatory term towards him. Now, there are those that say, well, there's no proof to back that up. However, his teammates say Myles doesn't lie. He doesn't just make stuff up like that. And, we don't really know enough about Mason Rudolph to really make an assessment upon that. But, however, the only thing we can tell is after that took place, Mason Rudolph and Myles Garrett scuffled. And like Gary said, Mason Rudolph eventually, with his own helmet, was clubbed by Myles Garrett. Now, I want everybody to understand something. While games can get physical, that became a weapon, all right? It became a weapon. Now, fortunately for Mason Garrett, he was actually not hit with the crown of the helmet. If he was hit with the crown of the helmet, it would be a completely different story. There'd be no way that Myles Garrett could ever be reinstated after that because it probably could have killed him. Almost every expert in the NFL says he could have been killed because that stuff is made to take punishment. The human skull is not capable of taking that kind of punishment without severe concussion or without severe long-term complications. He could have killed him, honestly. Do I think they made the right choice? Well, I'm going to leave that up to the experts. I'm going to leave that up to the people that made this decision. But honestly, they've got to find a way to kind of fix this. I mean, yeah, he got suspended for the rest of the season, but not like the Cleveland Browns were having a great season anyway. But the thing is, though, I think he got off a little light. But again, I'm not the one that can actually speculate as to whether what he did was justified because he was called a derogatory term. Not that I condone that, because I don't condone that. I think it's a horrible thing for you to say to somebody, but it can be neither proven. But I'm not going to say Myles Garrett's a liar either. again, I just don't know. What do you think, Gary?
Well, here's how I viewed it back then, and then as far as viewing it now. Back then, I viewed it from this standpoint. The game was over. Pittsburgh was in its own side of the field, basically almost in their end zone. They were on like the 10-yard line. They were, it was like 20-something seconds left in the game. He drops back to throw a pass. Myles Garrett, the pass was gone, okay? So Myles Garrett didn't sack him. He had thrown the ball. Myles Garrett got a hold of him, and instead of easing up, he actually tosses him to the ground, like pretty significantly. Mm-hmm. Rudolph took exception to that. Now, Rudolph did go after Myles Garrett and grabbed his helmet, but that was because Myles Garrett had a hold of him and wouldn't let go. Yeah. Now, whatever exchange they had on the ground, it's really neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Things that get said in football games, I'm not saying they're right or wrong, but if Myles Garrett took offense to the fact that Mason Rudolph called him a name, that's one thing. But then he ripped off the guy's helmet and then swung it at him. Mm-hmm. Now, listen, he got suspended. It's over with. I'm fine with that. Here is my view going forward. Myles Garrett has a reputation for being a slightly dirty player.
Yeah.
This isn't his first offense. He's been fined upwards of $50-something thousand in his career. He's only been in the league a couple of years. I want to see what his actions are going forward.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's going to have to answer questions about this in the preseason, leading up to the season. Is he willing to answer those questions, or is he going to hide and say, no, I'm not talking about this. I'm only here to talk about football. Mm-hmm. I want to see some contrition. I want to see some, apologetic behavior. He doesn't have to apologize to Mason Rudolph. I think he has to apologize to the Cleveland Brown organization and the Cleveland Brown fans. Mm-hmm. And then going forward, I believe he needs to show that he's not a dirty player. So the point is if he has more incidences on the field, and maybe they're not this extreme, but still, he's going to end up building a reputation as a dirty player.
Yeah, I think
he's going to end up like Vontez Burfict or whatever that guy's name is,
yep.
And he's going to get nailed every week.
Yeah, I think he's already left his legacy behind. That's all he's going to be remembered for right there.
Unfortunately, right now, yes.
That's all he's going to be remembered for. He could go to another football team and he could have a successful season. He could be declared one of the greatest sack players of all time. He could be a superstar in the future, but that's what he's going to be remembered for.
That's debatable. Yeah. I mean, it's debatable. He's young enough. I think if he cleans up his act, so to speak, mm-hmm. and doesn't have another on-field incident that even is anywhere close to this one, mm-hmm. I think he can maybe bury it a little bit. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's other guys that have done some shady stuff, and they were able to kind of put it behind them.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Like I said, he has a reputation, so we'll see what happens.
Sure thing. Yeah, go ahead and give us your points of view out there in the audience about what you feel about this whole situation. As far as when it comes down to conduct of players on the field, I mean, I don't know if there's any real way to control that because, like I said, emotions get heavy out there on the field. So what can coaches do to curtail this, do you think?
I personally think that this is a league thing, mm-hmm. and I think the league has made a mistake, and I think the league has kind of handcuffed themselves, so to speak. A few years ago, the league wasn't as harsh about certain things, but then they went from one extreme to the other. Now they're suspending guys, multiple games for things that are questionable. Don't get me wrong. I mean, anything that's off the field that involves like domestic violence or things of that nature, those guys should be suspended. I'm not even arguing that. But, like some of the on-field incidences, I mean, you have some guys that aren't necessarily considered dirty players who have gotten suspended for one game for dirty hits or things of that nature. I mean, you could bring up the Tom Brady thing, suspending him for 4 games over stuff that they really couldn't prove. I think the league has to fix it, and I think the league has to make up their mind how they're going to handle these situations. And they have to put their foot down and say, well, this is what the suspension will be, and then if you do it again, this is what it's going to be. Kind of like they do with the drug treatment program. Yeah. Second, third offenses, you get suspended for a year. Type of deal. Now, listen, I'm not talking about the drug thing. I'm just using that as an example of how long the suspensions can be.
Yeah.
Personally, I think he did his time. They suspended him for half a year. He lost a lot of money. I think going forward, the league just needs to get a handle on this and have this not happen again.
Okay. Makes sense. Sorry about that, folks. I actually bumped my mouse. So anyway, I think they really need to set the example and set the precedence, but they have to be consistent when it comes down to that, right? If it was Vontez Burfict, he would have been ejected, no questions asked. Because he has that pattern, kind of like Ndamukong Suh. He had that pattern, right? But I think it's just because, this was like the most egregious thing that Myles Garrett ever did. They really didn't set that precedent. So I think they have to be really consistent in that regard. And if you do that, you shouldn't just be suspended for the rest of the season, but probably even the next season even, because that'll really send a message right there to ensure that players are actually held to a higher standard, because it's not just adults that are watching this, it's kids that are watching this. And I'm not saying that kids are like the NFL should be responsible if kids react to this, but they are seeing this. They're seeing this stuff on television. And if there's anything to be angry about is seeing stuff like that. But, that's like neither here nor there. So, but yeah, I just think that the NFL should definitely be more consistent and actually lay down some serious repercussions for that. So what you got?
Well, I don't very often agree with Stephen A. Smith from ESPN, if ever. But he actually made a pretty good point when it came to this specific subject. What he said was that they should have suspended him for at minimum of the first game of this year. Mm-hmm. And his reason behind it was, we've gone through a whole off season. People probably have maybe forgotten about it. When they heard, when people heard Myles Garrett was reinstated, they may not even remember what happened. So he was saying they should have suspended him for the first game so that it was a reminder to not only Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers, but to the rest of the fans that this incident did take place, that it did happen on a football field, and that it can't happen again. Mm-hmm. So I don't often agree with Stephen A. Smith, but I kind of do agree that maybe they could have carried it over to at least one game this year, and that would have been opening day. Sure
thing. All right, so before we go ahead and go on to our main topic of discussion, we're going to go ahead and take a 30-second break. For those that aren't aware, we are... I'm sorry. If you haven't done so, please go ahead and hit like and share if you haven't done so already. Ensure that you share this out to, if you subscribe to any football channels, share it out to some football channels. If you share it out to Facebook pages, share it out to Facebook pages on Twitter, Instagram, what have you. Anything that you do to help us get this message out here, to get this show out here, would be greatly appreciated. We appreciate everybody that's taking time to contribute to this show today. And like I said, this is going to be the second of many football shows, because we can talk about football year round. And
yes, sir.
Guarantee we are going to keep talking about it year round. So let's go ahead and get back to our topic of discussion tonight. So one of the things that the thing that Gary and I are going to talk about today, we're going to talk about who we think are the biggest losers of this 2019 NFL season and who we think the biggest winners. People that didn't go to the Super Bowl. So the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs are automatically disqualified because they made it to the big game, okay?
Yep.
So they don't count. Sorry, Sarge, but,
Well, ultimately, those two teams are the biggest winners, but we're not going to talk about them in this scenario.
Exactly. So, anyway, we're going to go ahead, and first we're going to start with, I'm going to give my biggest loser of the NFL season, and then Gary will give his, and then we'll go into the biggest winners eventually. And if we have time, we'll find another topic. So, first things first. Who do I think the biggest loser of the 2019 season is? I'm going to have to go with the Cleveland Browns. Here's the reason why. The Cleveland Browns have a very talented football team. You got Jarvis Landry that plays for them. He's a very good wide receiver. You've also got, I know people say that Odell Beckham Jr. is overrated, but that guy is a phenomenal wide receiver. Yes, he's a drama queen. Yes, he has a lot of weird antics that he does on the field, but the guy is great. I think he is a great wide receiver. He has the capability of making impossible catches. He's not Randy Moss. There is no other Randy Moss but Randy Moss. So I don't want anybody to think that, right? But the thing is, though, is you've got all this talent, right? And Nick Chubb is not a bad running back. He's actually a very, Very good running back. The guy is a steam engine. That guy can mow down defenses like it's nothing. And their offensive line isn't actually half bad. Baker Mayfield is not a terrible quarterback either. Now, I think the thing with Baker Mayfield is he just has a lot of growing up to do. Now, I thought he did pretty good last year. Last season, he did a great job with a team that had gone consistently with one win in 2 years. That was mostly just because of their last owner, or their last coach. But then they get Freddie Kitchens, and then they start winning football games. They start actually bringing a team together. Their defense wasn't all that bad either. Hell, last year, they were the team that led in sacks last year, actually, if I'm not mistaken. I could be off, but that was according to the stats that I had read. They were great about knocking the ball loose. They were about fumble recovery, interception, whatnot. And this year, they had a lot of returning players. But for some reason, they just could not click. To me, it's inexcusable to have all that talent on that team and not bring together. Now, granted, they were 6-10. I honestly think with a team like that, they could have very, very well could have gone far into they could have actually brought it a little bit more against, because aren't the Ravens and them in the same conference?
Mm-hmm.
They are in the same conference. I think they could have brought a little bit more, especially against weaker teams. Like when I saw them playing against Seattle,
they beat the Ravens this year.
They beat them once this year, but that was before Lamar Jackson actually opened up on everybody. But the thing is that I honestly think that they could have done so much better, but because they just were not clicking as a team. Freddie Kitchens, this was his first real season as a head coach. And I think it's just because
they should have never hired him.
They never should have hired him, honestly. I think his successes was kind of a fluke last year. And I think it's just because they all hated their last coach so badly, they would have taken anybody. I honestly think they would have taken any coach but their last coach. That was Hugh Jackson, right? Or was that his name?
Yeah, Hugh Jackson.
Hugh Jackson. I honestly think they would have taken anybody but Hugh Jackson. And because they finally were able to come together as a team, they were able to pull together that many wins. I mean, that was their best season in years, honestly.
Yeah, well, they quit on this guy too, though.
Yeah, they quit on Freddie Kitchens. I think it's just because the magic ran out. But to me, it's just inexcusable for you to have that much talent on that team. All those wide receivers, a halfway decent offensive line, and a good running back like Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is not just a great running back. He's also a pretty damn good receiver, too. But again, they just weren't able to come together. I honestly think that the Cleveland Browns were the biggest losers, even though they didn't have the worst record. But they definitely could have put together a much better season. So I say the Cleveland Browns. What do you say to that, Gary?
Well, I mean, the disappointing teams, and then my biggest loser for the year. And Cleveland is definitely one of the disappointments this year. I don't disagree with anything you said. Other than the fact that I don't think Freddie Kitchens was even qualified to be the coach of this team. He made a decent coordinator, but he hadn't done enough to warrant the job. They quit on him. I'm not a Baker Mayfield fan. I don't think Baker Mayfield is a superstar in this league. I think he's a serviceable quarterback, but I don't think he's a superstar. Mm-hmm. My other disappointments would be obviously the Dallas Cowboys. You're talking about another super uber talented team who underachieved. I think the Eagles were a slight disappointment, even though they made the playoffs, because they were predicted to go a lot further. They did get bit by the injury bug, but they would have been a disappointment for me. But my biggest loser of the year, and you could actually put them in this position almost every year, is the Cincinnati Bengals. Mm-hmm. Or as I like to call them, the Bungles, because that's what they are, is they are a bungle of bungles. Here's the thing that everybody has to understand it's easy to pick on the Bengals. Okay. It's very easy. They're not good. They're very rarely good. A couple years ago, they had a decent year. They got dusted in the playoffs in the first round. But the point is, on the regular, this team is no good. Okay. They have talented guys. Their defense is usually pretty stiff and pretty solid. But the way this team is run, this team is terribly run. It's from the top down. the ownership to the general manager to the coaching staff. This team is a disaster, and they're a disaster yearly. I mean, this is a team, once again, who is going to have the number 1 pick in the draft. And once again, we're going to have to go through those stories of, is this kid, Joe Burrow, going to go play for the Bengals or not? Okay? Because, and that's a subject we could get into, down the road. But the point is, I believe the Bengals are head and shoulders the disappointment, the losers of the year. I don't even really think it's close. I think Cleveland may, be in the mix, but I think the Bengals are way ahead when it comes to losers of the year. We're talking about a team that won, 2 games? 1 or 2 games this year?
I think they only won 1. I could be wrong.
I'm saying 1 or 2 games. They weren't in, they were in a few, they played decent here and there, but overall, they weren't very good. This is a team that should have got rid of Andy Dalton ages ago.
Eesh.
They replace him this year and then bring him back at the end of the year because the kid they put in couldn't do the job. So
I don't even know who it is.
I can't even remember the kid's name, but they let some no-name kid, rookie guy, play. They benched Andy Dalton and then they let him come back. The Bengals have been terrible, and they're historically terrible. And don't get me wrong, we know there's been teams like this. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers from back when, back in the day, were awful for a lot of years, and it took them a long time to build, a winning team. So, who knows? Maybe the Bengals could figure something out. But as far as this year, they're my biggest losers. I don't know how you feel about that, but they were a disaster.
I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that Andy Dalton has been in the league for what? Over a decade?
I don't know, 100 years.
And he's never really had consistent seasons. I chalk that up to a lack of, I think it's just because they put so much faith into him and A.J. Green to make things happen.
I'll say, here's the thing. A.J. Green is a Hall of Famer, and Andy Dalton isn't as good as everybody thought he was.
Yeah. And I think they were just putting too much stock into him, right? And they were
Pretty much.
Thinking, they were thinking, oh, yeah, he's going to be our Hall of Fame quarterback. No, he's not. Not even close.
Well,
and the thing is that with a guy like Andy Dalton, they didn't build a team around him necessarily. I can definitely agree, but the thing is, like, they didn't really have that many superstars on their team this year, and let alone the fact that they did not mold like a team should, and they had a first year coach too.
Yeah, I guess I'm judging it based on the fact that they've been historically bad.
Oh yeah,
and they haven't gotten any better. We're talking about a team that's not very well run. And it's similar to the Cleveland situation because the Cleveland went ahead and fired their GM and, they redid their entire coaching staff. So we've seen other teams do this. So, I mean, I think what I'm saying is I think we kind of agree with the concept of why we picked the teams we picked.
Oh,
they might be different teams, but they're very similar in why we picked them as the biggest losers for the year.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let's just say, having driven through Cincinnati a few times, it's not exactly a great city to drive through, actually. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the thing. They're going to have a hard time attracting free agents to that place.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just I really felt for Cincinnati because they've tried so hard to get the right people, but it's just the fact that they haven't been good since they went to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's the last time they were any good. I think there was 1 year that they actually went into the playoffs. It was like a few years ago. They went to the playoffs and they were it was when they went up against the Steelers, I think it was, and the Steelers just manhandled them.
No, they got mowed down in the play. That's the thing. They were good. They had a decent record, like I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, and they got absolutely annihilated in the first round of the playoffs.
I think it was against the Steelers too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember they were at one point were pretty good, but it's just even when Joe Burrows doesn't even want to go to that team, I mean, I can't say I blame him either.
It's not confirmed, but there's been speculation as to whether or not he's actually going to go there.
Yeah. But apparently he does not want to go there. I mean, that's just
I'll just add this tidbit that if I'm Cincinnati, I'm trading the pick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trading the pick for. I'm going to get a boatload for that pick.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm going to find a team who's desperate for for a franchise quarterback, and I am going to do I'm going to pull a Herschel Walker deal.
Oh yeah.
And get like 9 draft picks for Joe Burrows. That's what I'm doing.
Well, honestly, if I was to pick two teams that are desperately looking for a quarterback to restart that franchise, I already got two in mind, actually. I mean, I know we're kind of jumping around on subjects, but I'm thinking, like, if the Bengals are this desperate, right, there's two teams that I already know that they could probably trade up for a lot of picks, the Cowboys and the Patriots. Right?
I don't know if the Cowboys, I mean, the Patriots may be in the market for a QB if Tom Brady leaves. Okay. Mm-hmm. The Cowboys are looking at having to pay Dak Prescott a whole boatload of money or go in a different direction. I think they're going to pay him. They're just not going to pay him what he wants. I actually think the team that is in the position to make that deal is the Washington Redskins.
You think so?
They're in the top 5. Well, they're going to be in the top 5 of the draft. Okay, they had a terrible record. They're going to be, or at least top 10 of the draft. Mm-hmm. So they have a top 10 draft pick going into this year. They have a young quarterback that they just announced today that they're not in love with. At least that's what the new coach and some other, they said he doesn't have the job. He's not guaranteed to have the job in Dwayne Haskins. So they have a young QB that they could trade back to Cincinnati. You understand? So they can make a deal like that where they say, well, we'll give you our young QB and a bunch of other stuff, and you give us your pick. Mm-hmm. They could flip-flop picks, plus give them Dwayne Haskins and whatever else they want to do. I'm just saying the Redskins, I think, are in the position to actually make that move because outside of the fact that their quarterback is unproven and that they're not fully on board with him being their franchise quarterback going forward, the Redskins actually have some decent players.
Yeah.
The Redskins are on right there where they're kind of a quarterback away. Mm-hmm.
They still got AP.
So it makes sense that that could be a team that you might want to watch out for when it comes to that situation. And the other one that I'll throw out there is the New York Giants.
Really?
Well,
go for it.
Once again, we're talking about a team who's in a rebuilding stage with a very young quarterback who they don't know if he's going to be that guy. Oof. Here's my point. Yeah. You've seen him play. I've seen him play this year. Is he going to be that guy? I guess we won't know unless they put some guys around him, but I'm not sure I'm sold on him.
Yeah, I remember last year during the draft when the Giants fans were losing their mind when they picked him because I think they wanted a wide receiver instead, and they picked
a quarterback from Duke.
From Duke.
I mean, he's from Duke.
Yeah.
How many great quarterbacks come out of Duke?
I can't think of any off the top of my head. I mean, I'm searching for the answer, but right now it seems to be escaping me. I wonder why that is, actually.
Because I don't think there's ever been a quarterback to come out of Duke that has been successful in that.
I mean, if anybody can look it up for us, if anybody can Google for us while we're doing the show, if they can find anybody.
Well, the only person who I could compare him to who came out of like a real small school, that ended up halfway decent is Tony Romo. Tony Romo went to a very tiny, tiny school. And he was undrafted or a high draft pick, and he had a decent career. Mm-hmm. I mean, but Duke, like I said, I don't even know how many players come out of Duke.
Well, Duke is known for basketball, not necessarily.
Exactly.
Well, that seems to be like the nature of the beast, though. Like, people that are great in football are not great at basketball usually, and people that are great at basketball are not necessarily great at football.
I think we'll go through the draft when it gets a little closer up.
Absolutely so. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and take a 3.5-minute break. Feel free to go use the bathroom or top off on your beverages of choice. We will be back after 3.5 minutes.
1 second. 1 second is all it takes. Your life can change in 1 second. The news can change in 1 second. And the world can change in 1 second. We live in a world where disinformation gets thrown about like it's just another day. Where fake news is the new norm and you can't trust the mainstream media. So what do? Where do you go? And who do you listen to? Where can you find the truth? Downrange with Sarge is where you should aim your sights. Sarge delivers a no-nonsense kind of show that shoots to you straight. This is a show that delivers on facts and aims to give you the truth. You can catch us on Spreaker Mondays and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and on Facebook Tuesdays and Thursdays at the same time. Downrange with Sarge. Always on target.
The media was meant to be the fourth branch of government. Always tell what's factual, not what sells faster. Where the media is meant to be unbiased and keep the populace informed of what's going on in the world. Nowadays, you have to ask yourself, what the hell happened? Coming at you live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Spreaker. Be sure to catch Alex Kirk, host of Depth of Perspective, where the truth has no bias. Every topic of today, whether it be political or social, will be discussed. Guests and opinions are always welcome. Prepare yourself for real life.
Welcome to No Bones About It, in conjunction with 365 Broadcasting. Be sure to hit that follow button and share this show out. Do you have a dog behavioral problem? How about a question about a specific dog breed? Well, on No Bones About It, we cover it all. We go over basic training methods to advanced behavioral problems. Have a favorite breed? Want to know its history? Your host Gary can tell you everything you want to know. You are listening to No Bones About It, where we don't just train dogs, we train humans.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully everybody has had a good break real quick. And, excuse me. All right, so we're not going to continue on with our next bit. Now we're going to talk about our biggest winners as far as the NFL season is concerned. So I went first last time. Gary, you go first this time. Who do you think is the biggest winner of this NFL season?
Okay, so I'm going to give you a change up here. Since you're doing the team that you're doing, I don't want to double up. So I'm going to pick I'm going to pick a different team because I have, like I said, I have a list of them.
Okay.
So I'm going to use, I'll use them in my list, but I'm going to choose my biggest winner as a different team just so we don't double up.
Okay.
Obviously, I believe the Ravens are on the list for biggest winners of this year. Mm-hmm. Yes, they had a disappointing playoff run, but overall they had a spectacular season. Lamar Jackson, put himself on the map. Going forward, we'll see what happens. So I believe that they had that they are definitely on the list. Other teams that I would consider surprise type teams this year, I think the Texans were another team that surprised a few people. They didn't have a great record, but they made a decent little run in the playoffs.
Sure.
But I would say that my biggest winner outside of the Super Bowl teams this year would have been the Tennessee Titans. Yeah. And here's my reasoning behind it. You're talking about a team who had a relatively no-name defense who played very well up until they ran into the juggernaut that is the Kansas City Chiefs. They played very well, and they don't have a lot of known guys, okay? Their offensive line played pretty well, considering they had the top running back in the league, rushing-wise. He had the top running. And the quarterback of that team is Ryan Tannehill. Okay.
Yeah.
We got the same Ryan Tannehill who couldn't get anything done in Miami. The same Ryan Tannehill that was like lambasted coming out of college. The same Ryan Tannehill that nobody considers a top tier quarterback.
Yeah.
But he goes to Tennessee, takes over that job, and puts that team in the championship game.
It's nuts.
Okay. So, as far as winners of the year, I believe they were probably the winner outside of those top three, four. They're right there. Mm-hmm. They had a spectacular year. I think they had a year that nobody saw coming. I don't think anybody saw this coming from the Tennessee Titans. And it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. Is Ryan Tannehill that guy? Has he had a rebirth, so to speak? Now that he's with a team that's got some weapons.
Yeah.
He's got some things that he can use to his advantage. So we'll see going forward if he could stay competitive and if this team could actually be a team that you're going to see in the playoffs on a regular basis. Now, I'm not going to sit here and think that this team's ever going to win a Super Bowl, especially playing in a conference that has the Chiefs and the Ravens and teams of that nature that aren't going anywhere anytime soon. Okay, so we're talking about the team that's probably in that 3 to 5, on the Richter scale, so to speak. You're looking at the Chiefs, the Ravens, and then everybody else in the AFC. But I would say that Tennessee had a probably unknown, snuck up on everybody.
Oh,
to me, they're my biggest winners of the year.
I'm actually like in agreement with you in that regard, because you also can't forget who their coach is.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Vrabel's that dude. Apparently, according to Tom Brady, that he said that guy is a genius, like an absolute offensive genius. And I think you're right, because like Marcus Mariota, I love Marcus Mariota because he came out of University of Oregon, so I'm always going to have a soft spot in my heart for him. And everybody around the league says Marcus Mariota is not a guy you could necessarily hate. But the thing is,
no, he's a good dude, but he's not a great quarterback. So,
well, he had a couple of good seasons, but he kept on getting injured. That was his problem.
Point is, he's not a franchise quarterback, and he never was going to be. Yeah. I mean, he's one of those serviceable guys where if you put him in the right position, he could be a decent player. But I don't think he was ever going to be a MVP of the league type guy.
Yep.
He's not Russell Wilson. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Patrick Mahomes. Yep. He's not Drew Brees. I don't even think he's on the second tier of quarterbacks, and that's why they made the move to get Tannehill.
Yep. But the thing is, like, kind of going back into it though, is like Ryan Tannehill.
Right, well,
how? That's what I'd like to know. How is it Ryan Tannehill just comes out of nowhere and just starts surprising everybody? And the thing is you said it though, is because they had the best. Like, I honestly thought that the running back that was going to take the running back title this year was Christian McCaffrey, but it was Derrick Henry. I mean, Derrick Henry is just mowing people down. And the thing was like he did it. He did it to the New England Patriots. He did it to the Baltimore Ravens. Like, honestly, could not stop laughing when I saw him using Earl Thomas as a blocker. Like, I couldn't help but laugh at that because, like, he just made it look so easy.
Sarge, I don't mean to interrupt, but Sarge says definitely not the Titans. He would say Buffalo. Sarge, we're not using San Francisco only because they made the Super Bowl. I wouldn't disagree. Yes, they came back from having a terrible year and ended up in the Super Bowl. But like we said, Kansas City and San Francisco would be the ultimate winners of the year, right? And we're talking about the guys that didn't make the Super Bowl. I don't disagree with Buffalo. I don't disagree. They had a great year. They're on my list of teams that were surprises this year. But I think the Tennessee was a bigger surprise.
Oh, yeah.
They went further in the playoffs. I actually think Buffalo's got more talent than Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
So in that scenario, the fact that Tennessee went a little further would, to me, put them a little ahead for my personal belief on my list of winners for the year.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I don't disagree with what he's saying. And if we were going to include the 49ers and Kansas City, well then, those are the two teams that had the biggest win,
of course,
of this year. They made the Super Bowl. If you want to take a caveat and add the 49ers because of what they came from,
yeah.
I mean, a 14 year prior, and ended up in a Super Bowl. Okay, so I'll give you that. But so they'd be like the ultimate winner on that, on that scale. But out of the teams that didn't go to the Super Bowl, I think the Titans are right there with the rest of them.
Oh, sure, absolutely. But kind of finishing my points as far as the Titans.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I can't name hardly anybody that plays on defense for the Titans. Nope. But I think that's one thing I like about them is the fact that they came together as a team and they played like a team. And I like that aspect when it comes down, because you take certain defenses, right? You can name off their top defensive players. Like, for example, you got Seattle Seahawks, you got the Legion of Boom, right? I hate that name, but you got Richard Sherman.
I love that nickname.
I hated that name, but you got Earl Thomas, you got Cam Chancellor, but you got all those guys. I mean, a great secondary. You know, you've got the 85 Bears, you've got that freaking 45 defense. I mean, you could name off all these players. I can't name anybody on, the Tennessee Titans defense. Just like last year when the Patriots completely shut out the Rams. I couldn't name a single defensive player on that team except Patrick Chung.
Well, outside of Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, you're going to have a hard time naming anybody on the Titans.
Yeah.
They have a very, they're underrated in my opinion, and they're just very nondescript when it comes to their guys. They don't have a bunch of superstars on a team, but they're very well coached.
Yeah.
And listen, I know, Sarge is going to say what he says because he's a Kansas City fan and Kansas City beat them in the playoffs. But trust me, going into that game, okay, Sarge was singing a different tune because that's not the team you wanted to see go to that game. The point is this team overachieved, okay? And so you have to put them on the list. And like I said, you could argue, where they go as far as ranking them, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, as far as surprise teams or whatever, but they're on the list.
Sure.
You could make an argument for Buffalo. You could make an argument for Minnesota. Minnesota's another team that had a great year this year that I don't think a lot of people were expecting them to have that kind of year.
Yep.
As far as like the disappointments, because I forgot about them, is Chicago Bears. They would go on the disappointing list. So it's a good debate to have. It's a debatable topic. What do you guys think out there? What do you guys think as far as surprises in the league, and who you think was the biggest surprise in the league?
So before I actually give mine up, because I know I'm going to go off on a real rant and I don't want to stop halfway through.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and take a 1-minute break right here. Folks, do us a favor. If you can think of anybody that's looking for advertisers or looking for anybody for us to advertise to, if you want to put out some feelers that there's like, hey, we know this great podcast, we know this great group of guys, talk about 365 Broadcasting. Reach out. Say, hey, are you looking for some people to sponsor your product? Well, I know this great podcasting company, 365 Broadcasting. They got Big Sarge, they got G Money, they got Alex. They have great shows. One's entertainment, one's dog training. If you would feel like putting out some feelers out there, if you feel like actually getting out there is like, hey, we would like for you to have these guys sponsor for you, send them over to our Facebook page, send them over to our YouTube channels, send them on over so for us to actually sponsor their product. Because I feel we put out great content, we put out good stuff, and we will always give them their due right here. What do you think, Gary? We looking for sponsors, right?
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right. Hey, Thomas, how you doing? Hey, happy birthday, Thomas. Everybody that hasn't said happy birthday, say happy birthday to Thomas.
Hey, happy birthday, brother.
All right. So, my biggest winners, okay? Now, there's a lot of teams out there that I felt were the biggest winners. Now, I would like to say that I want to say Seattle, but the thing is I can't say Seattle because I'm biased towards them. But I'd like to say it, but I can think that some teams that I think are huge winners are like the Green Bay Packers, brand new coach. A brand new coach. He's very young too. I mean, he's still like in his mid. I think I'm the same age as him. I think I'm even older than this guy. But he actually was able to put together a very good winning record. Vikings are another good one. Gary and I talked about how the Steelers, had nobody and were still able to come away with a fairly decent record, actually. But honestly, when it comes down to it, I am going to go with the Baltimore Ravens. Not just because Gary and I are friends, but here's the reason why I say the Baltimore Ravens. Last year, their season came to a somewhat disappointing end against the Chargers, right? That's another disappointing team right there. But, Phillip Rivers, I just don't like him very much, so I don't really care. But the reason I say the Baltimore Ravens, right? I say the Baltimore Ravens is because Lamar Jackson was playing out of his freaking mind this year. He had a very decent offensive line that was protecting him. He had Mark Ingram that was just steamrolling people. You have Gus Edwards as a backup running back. That's almost impossible to stop at times. Some teams were able to figure it out, though. But the thing is, though, is throughout the entire football season, nobody could figure out how to stop this mobile quarterback, right? All right? This mobile quarterback that's able to just, make other defenders miss. I mean, to me, I think it's mobile quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson that are truly the future of the NFL. Like, some of those guys, they were like a complete rarity. You had Michael Vick, but we hate Michael Vick, so he doesn't count. You had Fran Tarkenton when he played for the Minnesota Vikings. There was no real way to stop somebody like that, right? But the thing is that when it comes down to how they played this year, right? One of the biggest pickups that they had is when they picked up Earl Thomas in the offseason, and then they picked up Marcus Peters. Those two guys are solid secondary players. Earl Thomas is probably one of the greatest safeties currently in the NFL. Yes, he had a bad season. Yes, I'm a little bitter about how he went out when he played for the Seahawks. Honestly, though, there's a lot of fans that say, oh, well, there's a little dispute right there. Him and Pete just didn't like it. Well, that's neither here nor there. The thing is, though, is that when it comes down to how they came together and formed this secondary that was absolutely lethal against especially younger quarterbacks, their defense was actually pretty damn good, too. Like, a lot of the times they were playing lights out with really talented teams. I think probably one of the best teams that they played all year, though, was when we played against the San Francisco 49ers. And guess who else they got? They have the most accurate kicker in the NFL. What was his kicking percentage again, Gary?
Oh, it's in the 90s. He's the most accurate kicker in the history of the NFL.
90s.
It's in the 90s. It's like his lifetime kicking percentage is like 93 point something for his life.
It's unheard of for a kicker to have that kind of a kicking percentage. And the thing is like I was really bitter about how they came in and they embarrassed Seattle. I mean, for example, Russell Wilson threw his first pick 6 of the season against Marcus Peters, and Marcus Peters was very happy about that because I think it was like he played Russell Wilson recently when they came to when he was still playing for LA. So this was kind of like a retribution. He was ready to play Russell Wilson that time, right? And then they had that fumble return for a touchdown. They embarrassed Seattle on our home turf. That's not easy to do. But the thing is, Baltimore did nothing but win throughout the season. Now, I think Lamar Jackson's going to come back even more tenacious and even more ferocious next year. Because the thing is the league is going to be ready. Give me a moment. I'll give you a chance.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Yep. Lamar Jackson just has to be careful next year because teams are going to be more ready for him than they were this year. I just think he was playing out of his mind because he had a lot to prove, and I think he's a great quarterback, and I like the fact that he's a very humble guy, too. I mean, that was one of the things I really liked about him, too. But this team really came together, and I give Coach Harbaugh a lot of credit for this team because he trusts Lamar Jackson to make the calls on the field. Something I would like the Seattle Seahawks to do, but when when they were playing against Seattle, they wanted to kick the extra point, right? But Lamar Jackson says, nah. No, they were on 4th and goal. It was like 4th, and they were 8 yards back. He's like, nah, I'm going to go for it. He's like, okay, go for it. He says, I trust you to go for it. And Lamar Jackson has that trust from his coaching staff. And then they went for a 2-point conversion, and they got it. And they have 2 great, solid tight ends on their team. Tight ends that can block and can catch the ball. This is a very lethal team, and I felt that they were the biggest winners. And I honestly thought they were the favorites to go to the Super Bowl. And I thought we were going to see a repeat between San Francisco and Baltimore. But the Titans were able to figure out how to stop Lamar Jackson, essentially. But I still say the Baltimore Ravens were the biggest winners. Go ahead, Gary.
Oh no, I was just gonna talk about from the standpoint of this is I don't disagree. I noticed that Sarge mentions that he thinks about it from a record standpoint and where these teams came from and whether or not they, if they stunk last year, then they were good this year. And I don't disagree. As far as that's concerned, I mean, like I wouldn't. That's why I didn't pick Baltimore, only because they were in the playoffs last year. And yes, they had a spectacular year this year. I mean, they went 14-2, so they went from a 10-6 team or whatever they were to a 14-2 team. But I took a little off the top when it came to biggest winners because he once again did not have a great performance in the playoffs. Okay, this is 2 years in a row. Now understand, and I'm a Ravens fan, so I know this. He's a baby. Okay, he is a baby. He's 23 years old. It's not. I'm saying it's not like he's been in the league 5 years. He's been in the league 2 years. Okay, this is his second year in the league. He was the unanimous MVP this year. Okay, so we're talking about a kid who's still like Stephen A. likes to say, his breath still smells like Similac. He's still a baby. So yes, he's just going to get better. But I took a little off the top as far as making him my runaway team for biggest success outside of the Super Bowl teams, because he did once again come up a little small in the playoffs, and he got beat by the team that I picked, obviously. Do I think that the league is going to catch up to him next year? No, I don't, and I'm going to explain to you why.
Okay. And
I'm going to use Sarge's team as an example. The league hasn't caught up to Patrick Mahomes, and this kid is very similar.
Yeah,
and I know Sarge is, he's going to back his guy, and that's fine. This kid is right there. He's got better. First of all, he's got better legs than Mahomes. Okay, Mahomes can run, but this kid's a running back.
Yeah.
Okay, when he runs, this guy does things other guys can't do.
Yeah.
He's underrated when it comes to throwing the ball. He's underrated. The kid's got a cannon for an arm. Okay, if he continues on the path that he's going, as far as learning to play the position and learning how not to take too much on himself, because that's his mistakes that he makes, is when he thinks he has to do it all by himself. He gets over that, and you're going to see him and Patrick Mahomes playing in championship games for the next 10 years.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm telling you that right now.
Well, not to cut you off, but Thomas says Baltimore had an easy division. They had a hard schedule this year.
Oh, no, they didn't have an easy division, not at all.
They had a hard schedule this year.
They played everybody that was good this year. They played the 49ers. They played
the Seahawks.
The Seahawks. Yep. They played Buffalo. They had to play they played everybody. They played all the playoff teams this year. They did not have an easy schedule whatsoever. No. Not even close.
Yep. Granted, yes, the division isn't exactly.
No, their division isn't great, but outside the division, they played all the real good teams.
They played a lot of solid teams and came out on top. So I think the team that had the easiest division this year was the Patriots, but that's neither here nor there, obviously. Just. Also, and I can't believe I forgot to mention that Lamar Jackson won the MVP this year. Mahomes won it last year. But it's just like, I just think it was really exciting to watch him play. And I was really, really glad to see, because I was actually one of his biggest haters too. Not really his hater, but it's just like I always said, when it comes to Lamar Jackson, when he played for Louisville, his biggest problem is any time he put the game on his back and tried to do everything himself, he fell apart. And that was the thing I was afraid of the most. But because he has all those weapons, right, he didn't have to do anything himself. But once the Titans shut all that down, he had to start doing everything, and they kept him contained. And it's just like, that was the one thing I was afraid of. But I think, though, is that a lot of teams, right, a lot of defensive coaches this year are going to spend this entire offseason, especially when they know they're going to have to face the Ravens. They're going to spend their entire offseason finding ways to stop Lamar Jackson. I mean, for example, every team, every offensive line, every offensive coordinator had to think of a way to stop Lawrence Taylor. I think it could be the same for Lamar Jackson, though.
No, they're going to do it, but that doesn't mean they're going to just be successful. Like I said, they haven't stopped Patrick Mahomes. And just to answer another question, because Sarge is out here chucking things out there because his Chiefs won the Super Bowl. We already congratulated you that your Chiefs won the Super Bowl. But anyway, I disagree a little. He said that Mahomes will be have a longer career because Lamar takes big shots.
Yeah.
And I don't know about I don't know if he remembers. I don't know if he remembers the shot that Mahomes took in the Super Bowl. So it's not like Mahomes is immune to taking big hits. And as these guys get older, they learn how to slide and get out of bounds. You know what I mean? Trust me, Lamar doesn't want to take hits like that. So he'll learn going forward that you don't want to put yourself in a position to take shots from 265-pound linebackers.
If anybody that's learned that painful lesson is Cam Newton, but
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. So I think I don't know if we could predict how long of a career these two guys are going to have.
Yeah.
You got to remember Mahomes is older, so unless Lamar has injury issues, we could see a very similar career path for both of these guys.
Oh, certainly.
And it's not like Mahomes hasn't been injured. He hurt himself on a quarterback sneak. Yeah. So you never know. I'm just saying you never know what's going to happen in a league. So I don't like to predict length of careers because it's football and anything can happen in football.
So I actually saw a funny video before we close up shop is people were asking, is Mahomes and Jackson, are they the new Peyton Manning and Tom Brady rivalry? What do you think?
They could be. I know Thomas is over here saying he's another RG3. That's not even close. He's way better than RG3. He is and RG3's his backup, so don't forget about that.
That's
RG3 is actually Lamar's backup, so that's kind of funny. But no. Listen, you could legitimately be looking at that type of rivalry. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. Mm-hmm. You could.
Yeah, of course.
These guys ain't going nowhere. These teams aren't going anywhere. These are the type of teams that are going to continue to retool. They're not going to rebuild, so they're not ever going to stink. You know what I mean? These aren't teams that are just going to go and fall off the earth and be terrible next year.
Yeah.
They're going to be good again.
Yeah.
And yes, I think you could see these two guys playing against each other in the playoffs for many, many, many years to come.
Oh, Thomas says he'll get hurt next year. That's a bold prediction.
Yeah,
Put some money on it. Put some money on it.
I don't see. I mean, the kid's a monster. He's a monster. It's not like he's some little frail dude either. He's a monster.
Yep.
He's been embarrassing people on the field. It's not like he's just playing good. He's been embarrassing people.
I think he's going to improve his football IQ over the offseason as well, like every good quarterback should, actually.
Absolutely.
And I think he's going to be working to build himself up and ensure that he doesn't get those hits.
His jump from one year to the next was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't play great the first year, and they made the playoffs, and he was terrible. Mm-hmm. But they didn't ask him to do anything that year. Well, they asked him to do more this year, and he won the MVP.
Yeah.
So
I think it all kind of goes back to the coach having faith in your quarterback,
plus rumor is he's a gym rat, and his work ethic is very, very strong. They say he's way like a perfectionist, and he wants to get better. So
well, and that's the thing. That's another thing I like about him, though, is like even though he doesn't belittle his team or he doesn't start yelling at people, he just gets very intense in the moment, though.
Well, if you watched him I don't mean to interrupt, but if you watched him in the playoffs, he was really hard on himself. He never really went after his guys for making mistakes. Mm-hmm. He took it more on himself, and that's what you need from your quarterback.
He's a leader.
Don't get me wrong. You want them to motivate guys, but you don't ever want them. Like you'll see Tom Brady do it from time to time, where he yells at his guys on the field, and that's not really a good look. Mm-hmm. So.
No, Peyton Manning did it all the time.
Listen, I think Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are going to be fighting it out, not only for Super Bowl appearances, but MVPs for the next 5, 6, 7 years. I really do.
All right, we're about ready to close up shop. So, Gary, go ahead and promote your shows before we close up shop.
Yeah, for anybody that's interested and wants to come and listen to me, my show, No Bones About It, it airs on Mondays and Fridays over on Spreaker at 10 a.m. in the morning. And you can find me on Facebook at No Bones About It, No Bones About It 101 if you search at No Bones About It 101. And you can get a lot of good tidbits and information off of my Facebook page as well.
All right, if you want to catch me on Saturdays I'll be doing Niner at 6:30 at Eastern Standard Time. I'll be doing reviews, TV shows, movies, video games, what have you. Depth of Perspective, I'm just going to let you all know that I'm going to start turning that into a rant channel. So Tuesdays on 8 p.m. is pretty soon going to go away. Yeah, probably in the near future. But I'll still keep doing it. I'll still keep putting out content. But always, every Thursday here at 6 o'clock on YouTube, you're going to find Gary and I talking football stuff. So anyway, we want to thank everybody for joining this evening. And finally, we can stream live from YouTube. We finally got to figure it out. So, all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. All right. And this stream is ended.
Peace.